Do I have to start over? I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. First thing on our agenda is actually the flag salute before the roll call. Let's stand for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we can do the roll call.
Councilmember McCardle.
Here.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here. So first thing on our agenda next is the public comments. Do we have any public comments from our audience or online?
No one signed up in person. We do have some people in the audience virtually. And I do see there is a raised hand on here. So Dwayne, I'll unmute you.
Evening, Council, Mayor, fellow council members, Wayne Landsberg, 24113 56th Avenue West. I just wanted to say thank you to the council and especially Steve Woodard on his comments the other night with regard to the TIP conversation. It's really, I'll just try to keep it as short as I can. It's really concerning to see the deferred maintenance of our road system and the potholes that we all have to navigate throughout the city. I mean, 48th is horrid down to the north, and 56th is also quite something. And even east on 236 from 56 is treacherous in a 550. So I appreciate that conversation, and I appreciate if council could try to work with staff to find some funds that would help. I've got 50 plus cars in our business and with staff that come and go every day, and the maintenance bills to those vehicles are far in excess of what the tax would be. It's concerning, and the long-term viability of the city that hasn't really added any major roads is concerning, that we aren't maintaining the roads that we have to a reasonable standard. So I appreciate the council recognizing that, working, and I do understand the staffing issues and the challenges. With that, I would implore council to keep the great staff that they have, and please recognize that retaining staff in these challenging times with proper funding is even-handedly would also go a long ways to ensuring that the city stays viable. So thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate everything that everyone does for the community, and again, thanks for the moment.
If there's anyone else in the online audience that would like to speak, please use the hand raise tool. Nancy Blevins. Nancy, can you unmute?
I unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I have been a resident of Mountlake Terrace for 22 years. I live on the corner of 48th and 221st Street Southwest. And my major concern is that there are not signs with speed limits for 25 miles per hour. I see people going probably 40 miles an hour down my road. I will, if I'm outside, I will yell at them, slow down. But we had an accident here, one lot away from my property, and a gal was killed in a road race incident 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, we don't want any more of that. And I don't think there's enough signs along 48th where I live, and I'm on a very busy street corner. There's lots of traffic. Okay. People trying to get onto I-5, going down my intersection, people coming home on my intersection, and the traffic has become way more than it used to be. And so I'm very, very concerned for my neighborhood. I would really, really like way more street signs with 25 mile per hour signs put up there, because people, I swear, they are speeding 40 miles an hour down 48th, and that's not right. We do not need another tragic accident like the one that happened 5-6 years ago that I think everybody knew about. It was one lot up from me, and we just can't afford this. We need to do something to cut the speed limit down so people see those signs. And that's what I'm asking, as well as I live on an intersection where people cross the intersection. Okay, the city put up holders on either side of the intersection with flags. All 6 flags have been gone for 2 months now. And that's not fair. It's not fair to people who cross that intersection. I am just trying to prevent another accident from happening across from me and down my road. And so, thank you, but this needs to be dealt with. It's a very busy street, as you know. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope something will be resolved here.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the online audience who would like to speak? Going once, going twice. That's the end of public comment.
All right. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Councilmember McCardle?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent calendar, items A, B, C, and D.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next is the council liaison reports, and I'm going to start on one side. I'll go back and forth. I'll start with Councilmember Murray and then Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 10th, I joined with folks from around our community as well as our Parks and Recs team for the National Day of Service cleanup at the Rec Pavilion in Terrace Park. And then on the 15th, and that was a great event, and appreciate everybody who helped bring that together. I thought it was great to see so many folks out, and it looked far better at the end of that event than it did at the beginning. So thank you to everybody who took time out of their Saturday to attend that. And then I was at our council work session on the 15th, and that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. I missed our last formal Monday, so I'm going to go a little further back than I would normally, just because I want to make sure to acknowledge what happened in the city. On the 28th, I had the honor of joining a number of residents at the library to meet with a group called Alternatives to Violence that's looking to well, quite frankly, end the violence in our schools. They actually have a follow-up session this Saturday for anyone who's interested. They'll actually do a workshop. It's a little bit longer here, about 5 hours, but you can find that information if you're interested later. On the 30th, a Tuesday, I had the honor of sitting on a panel called Leaders of Color for Leadership Snohomish County. It was looking at the importance of diversifying boards, volunteer boards. That was a wonderful experience. On the 31st, I stopped by for the Mavericks Care backpack giveaway. They were doing great. We got the word out a lot better, so thank you to the city for always supporting that, but doing an even better job of advertising it. I want to say that when I got there, it was right as it opened, and they had already given out 50 backpacks before they officially had opened. On the 7th, I had the honor of giving a talk at Liberty Road Foundation. My concept was Leaps of Faith, which was just a long story there, but nonetheless had an opportunity to represent the city in front of a number of business leaders. On the 8th, I had the opportunity to join our mayor at Linwood City Council, our chambers, I should say, with a group called Community Engagement on Safety and Security, which you'll learn more about as they get going. But once again, another organization that's growing, that's looking at the violence, particularly amongst our youth here in the city, and seeing what we can do about that. There'll be more to come on that soon. A little bit more contemporary, on the 14th, I did join Coffee with the City, where Stefan had his debut, and I think it was as well attended as most of the Coffee with the Cities, meaning that whoever showed up usually had great questions, and they did have at least one person there, and she had wonderful questions. And then I was with us on the 15th for our study session. And then last night, as it would turn out, I was with the mayor again, just didn't realize we were together, for an event called Homecoming, which was a fundraiser to raise money to help end and support those going through domestic violence and homelessness. Into my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. On September 13th, I attended the Left One Police and Fire Retirement Medical Program to review submittals by the retired officers. And then actually before that, on the 12th, by the way, did I say, yeah, I did say the 13th. And before that, the 12th, on Monday, I helped set up the tour, I was going to say tour de Terrace, the Terrace of the Art show at our library. The show will run from this Saturday, and it'll follow the library hours, so from the 23rd to, or the 24th to October 1st. So 1 week art show, library. The 23rd will be a private ceremony for the artists that are receiving awards, and the council members are asked to attend and be introduced if you can. And that will be starting directly at 6:30 in the library, so there won't be any a party going on in the library or the art show first. It's going to start with the ceremony at 6:30 and hopefully end at 7. Then we'll go in and preview the work and the artists that were awarded. And they'll have some light hors d'oeuvres, pie, cheese, and crackers. All right. And that's the end of my report. So 6:30, council members, Friday night if you can.
Okay, 6:30. We'll be there. Well, I'll be there. Councilmember Salmore?
Thank you. I had a sneak peek on September 16th to see some of the art entries, and it will be a lovely show this year. And additionally, on September 13th, I attended Left One meeting. And then just Mrs. Blevins, if you listen in to the TIP or read the TIP, there are some construction projects on your road. I do know that, we all know that 48th is a hard road to reduce the speed because it's a straight shot, and hopefully we'll be looking at more projects on that street soon.
Excuse me. Thank you. Councilmember McCardle?
Thank you, Mayor. On Tuesday, September 13th, I attended the RPAC committee meeting where we got an update on the Ballinger Park Trail construction that's happening, and I will leave the details of that because it's item 8 on our agenda. So we'll hold the surprise till then. And then on the 15th, I was at the workshop. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wald?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brief report, just on the 15th, had a conference call with the mayor and city attorney, and then later that evening had the work session. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Okay, so for my report, I'll go back to September 7th, where I had a all Snohomish County mayors meeting. And then on the 8th, the affordable housing breakfast, which was on Zoom still. And it was about the candidates of the 38th legislative districts on housing. And then later on that day, I attended the Board of Health Executive Committee meeting. On the 9th, I attended Edmonds Multicultural Group. They put on a Harvest Moon Festival. And I'm going to neighboring cities to their events to see what we can do here. So I'm getting ideas. And on the 10th, I went to Linwood to attend their fair on the 44th. And it is a larger version of our National Night Out. It was very, very well attended. And I have lots of ideas about that too. And on the 12th, I attended the Snohomish County Mayor's special meeting. And on the 13th, I attended the AWC Housing Group. And we're going to be meeting quite a few times on that. So more to come. And then I attended the Board of Health meeting. And on the 14th, I attended the Executive Summers and the Mayor's meeting. On the 17th, I attended the AAPI Hometown Heroes celebration. And we had really good, everybody from Snohomish County that showed up were people that I sent the invites to from here. And so this is the Asian Hometown Heroes, and that would be police, fire, and military. And so we had our Officer Wynn attend, and then we had several people from the Fire District 1 and Commissioner David Chan. And then the Seahawks donated a helmet autographed by Kobe Bryant. And winner for that was our own Officer Wynn. So I'm really wanting to get a photo op with him and the Seahawks. And let's see. And then last night, the 18th, I attended the homecoming concert for fundraising for the homeless and affordable housing, including Cocoon House, Maud's Home, YWCA, and more. It was a evening of music and raising money for special causes, and I didn't see our council member Woodard there, and he didn't see me. So it was an amazing time. There was people everywhere. So I guess, but hopefully we raise some money for them, and they're planning to do it again next year. And that is the end of my report. And the next on our agenda would be the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For the record, Stephen Clifton, acting city manager. There is a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission meeting this Wednesday, September 21st. That begins at 7 p.m. here in City Hall in the Lake Ballinger meeting room. And then on October 3rd, during the city council meeting, We've invited the Volunteers of America, and they'll be talking about two topics, Linwood Neighborhood Center, and then also the Mountlake Terrace Prevention Coalition, which relates to decreasing youth substance abuse. And that concludes my update.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is the public hearing on the Process and Procedures Chapter Title 18.05 Amendments Ordinance, Land Use Hearing Examiner Code Revision.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. Christy Osborne, Community and Economic Development Director. I am going to share a PowerPoint with you here. This evening we are reviewing ordinance to amend some portions of our municipal code for the procedures and administration of land use applications. And primarily we're looking at existing chapter 1805, which we're proposing to repeal and replace in total. And then chapter 1910, which has to do with administrative procedures in our zoning title. And then we have some assorted other technical amendments that need to be updated because we're making these changes. So I will, no, I think I have to do this. I have to get used to the setup over here every time. So I'll give you a little background from our previous work session. Back in 1995, the state adopted regulatory reform measures due to having a streamlined and consistent permitting process throughout the state of Washington for both land use and environmental review. And the city adopted regulations to comply with these chapters, primarily chapter 1805 and 19110 in our municipal code. The content and review processes in both of these chapters and in some other subsections of our municipal code conflict with each other in many cases, and so we're before you this evening to try to eliminate those conflicts and make it clear as to implementation as far as these processes go. We have also had issues as far as implementation regarding the different review requirements that are in these different sections, what we're supposed to do for notification to the public, and then just criteria that's been established is conflicting in some cases. Council has also expressed a preference to have quasi-judicial decision-making conducted by a professional land use hearing examiner to reduce liability and provide a more equitable decision-making process for land use applications. So a brief overview of the changes to chapter 1805, which is titled Administration and Procedures. We have proposed to repeal what's existing and replace it with a whole new chapter that establishes procedures, decision-making criteria, target timelines, and public notification requirements. We're defining permit types as type A through type D, and we're including additional definitions for clarity in implementation. And then we're also including where we're required by law, processing timelines, vesting requirements, and requirements for time extensions and hearing procedures. And then we're also identifying in this chapter the hearing examiner as the decision maker for quasi-judicial decisions. For chapter 19.110, this is in our zoning code, and this chapter is specific for zoning. And it contains decision criteria, which we're going to use for zoning-based permits such as variances, conditional use permits, site plan development, and rezone request. It also identifies what the requirements are to an applicant for what is a complete application. And then we include some needed cross-references for things like building permits or certificate of occupancy, temporary use permits, and then departure procedures as well in our code. And then there are provisions that were previously contained in this chapter that conflicted with 1805, and so we have removed those conflicts in this chapter as well. We're also including some amendments to other code sections and subsections, and these are essentially where we're correcting references to code sections that are no longer applicable and correcting those to the right cross-references in Title 16, which is our environmental provisions, our Title 17, which is subdivision, and then there's some other areas of Title 19, which is zoning, that we're cleaning up with this as well. For the Planning Commission held an introduction on this and then 2 review meetings. In addition to that, they held a public hearing. The proposed code changes are categorically exempt from SEPA, our State Environmental Policy Act, due to it being procedural in nature. We're required to give notice to the State Department of Commerce as far as review and our intent to adopt these provisions. We have done that, and their review was completed on August 1st of this year. We've received no public comment either in the Planning Commission review or up to the hearing this evening in writing or verbal comment. And the Planning Commission recommended unanimously to approve the proposed code amendments before you. Advantages is that the code changes will provide clarity and eliminate conflict between current municipal code sections. It will assist in streamlining the land use permitting process. It complies with the requirements of state law, local project review, and it provides for review of more complex applications by a professional land use attorney, i.e. a hearing examiner. Disadvantage, staff sees no disadvantages in the proposed amendments. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to let you know how much we all appreciate you bringing this forward. It's been a long time coming, but we recognize how much work has gone into this in repealing, really recognizing that we had to fix our codes as they were. I mean, over time, we've amended throughout the years and found ourselves in a position where things conflicted with each other. And so what originally seemed like a simple fix turned into a lot more work than I think we recognized going into it. But we appreciate everything that you've done to make it, get it into a better position where we are bringing it forward today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we always find unintended consequences whenever we try to do something good.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So, oops, just lost that. The recommendation here is,
Mayor,
yes,
you need to open it up for public comments.
okay.
Hearing.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, public hearing is now open. And do we have any?
No one is signed in person. If there's anyone in the virtual audience or online audience that would like to speak, please use your hand raise tool. Now, I see Dwayne still. Are you looking to comment again?
Oh, sure.
Uh-oh, go ahead.
Council, good evening again. As one of many from Clear, tonight I'm commenting at the public hearing in favor of multiple conversations over, oh my gosh, it's been at least 5 to 6 years of time, whether we've all served the community best by the process that we're currently in, or whether the idea of just following in line with the votes and the hearings that we all following the rules, if you will, that a person like a hearing examiner could simply implement. And so all of us from Clear are strong in proponents of passing this. It's long overdue in our opinion, and we appreciate staff's time and effort to get it to you. Thank you.
Nancy, did you want to speak again? Okay. Going once, going twice. That's the end of public comment for this topic.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to repeal and replace Chapter 18.05, Administration Procedures, and amend Chapter 19.110, Zoning Permits, and other associated code sections as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
so it's been moved and seconded. Do we just go right into do we have discussion on this before we go into votes?
Only if you need discussion, Mayor.
Are there any? I see none, so we'll just go right into the vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the public hearing and adoption of the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, TIP ordinance.
Did we?
Good evening, Mayor Matsumoto Wright, Mayor Pro Tem Wall, and council members, Interim Public Works Director Phil Williams, here tonight at the scheduled date and time for a public hearing on the changes or the update to the Transportation Improvement Program that we discussed in your work session last week. I have a somewhat abbreviated PowerPoint from last week that I'd like to go through before we start the hearing, and suppose if you have any additional questions before the hearing starts, be sure to let me know. So the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program is updated each year, as all of you know. That is required by state law. The update must be incorporated into the city's comprehensive plan by amendment, and it then replaces the previous year's TIP locally. The state of Washington then in turn incorporates our TIP into the state's TIP each year, and that has a lot of benefits, but the primary one, oh, it's not showing, is it? Sorry about that.
I won't necessarily repeat all that, but the state in turn then takes our TIP and incorporates it with all the other local government transportation improvement programs into their state program, along with everything that DOT does as well. And the primary benefit really of that is it makes us eligible to apply for and receive federal funding for transportation projects. The goals of this 2023 to 2028 TIP are first and foremost to achieve the City Council's transportation goals as reflected in your approved Transportation Master Plan, which was adopted in 2020, and to continue some core programs that you've set aside money each year, which can be used in that budgeted year, or it can be saved up for a couple of years for a larger project, and these would include allotments for paving of your city streets, which has been funded at this same level for quite a number of years now, about $240,000. You also have a core program that provides for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act for sidewalk and ramp construction. There's a $50,000 set aside on that. There's a smaller sum of $25,000 to work on signal cabinets and also the controllers in those signal cabinets so they can either be rehabilitated or replaced. That number's also, I think, been pretty steady for a while. I don't even know off the top of my head how many signal cabinets you have yet, but you can't even buy one of them for that amount of money, so just as a frame of reference. The bicycle route program is funded at $10,000. So mostly that would be restriping projects where you can find streets where you have enough space to mark bike lanes as well as travel lanes and parking if necessary. That can be used in and of itself or added to a capital project that you have funded to do the same thing. Then you also have a traffic calming program. The concern that was expressed in public comment tonight be a good candidate for that. If the citizen wants to point out a place where they think they have a problem, we would go out and do a speed study to find out what the factual situation is on speeds in that location. And there are metrics how that's all done. And then if it meets those criteria, it would be eligible to spend some of this money, whether it's new signage. We don't typically sign streets for 25 miles an hour. That is the default speed limit on all city streets unless it's otherwise marked differently. So most streets in town don't have 25 mile an hour speed signs, but you could put in radar feedback signs, things like that. And then lastly, I just want to point out, we do try hard to prioritize the needed projects that we have first to try to find as much other funding as possible to stretch the city dollars as best we can. Probably intuitive, but it's worth mentioning. Here's some of the key sources of funding that we get approximately these amounts every year. This would be sort of 2022 numbers. The Transportation Benefit District generates about $325,000 a year. All of that is currently programmed in street capital projects through Fund 112, which is what we update with the TIP. State gas tax revenues, 2022, we're expecting about $521,000, and about 110 of that goes to the capital program, and the rest is used in the street operating fund for maintenance and taking care of our existing streets, but not for capital projects. Transportation impact fees, that goes up and down extremely, it's very volatile. I think in the last 5 to 7 years, the list I looked at, you had one year where you got $360,000, but it's averaged somewhere around 70 grand for the last 5 years or so. All of that goes to the TIP as well. And then typically your street construction projects receive about assistance of about $385,000 a year out of your real estate excise tax. I was looking into that today. I know you are well aware of this, I'm sure, getting updates from finance frequently, but in the 2021-2022 budget, at some point there was kind of a scare, I think, that the pandemic was going to just devastate things like REIT and other sources of revenue, and they reduced the expected revenue to $450,000 a year. I was just adding up the actuals for 2021 and 2022 year to date, estimated to year end, you got about 3.88 million instead of 900,000. That's pretty great. But of that amount, whatever it is, about 385 does come to the street construction fund for capital projects. And then there's a little bit of interest earnings that don't amount to very much nowadays. So just under $900,000 a year is pretty typical on the ongoing revenues that come into that street construction fund, which we use to match grants when we can get them. That's probably the primary use. There are some small projects that we just fund with REIT alone. Let me go back here. This we saw last week, but the top part, the white part, is all the things I just described, so I won't repeat them. Those are coming in pretty much the same every year. The bottom part is where there's an interesting story to tell, and we did tell it last week. It probably bears repeating quickly. If you look at the 6 lines that are, I guess that's orange, the first one is an FHWA grant from their Surface Transportation Program for right-of-way acquisition, which is really leftover funds from Phase 1, which we can use now in Phase 2. Skip the second line. The third line is another FHWA, Federal Highways Administration, STP grant, Surface Transportation Program, for construction. And that's $2 million that we have secured. Then there's a state funding allocation. It was an appropriation, so I'm assuming that was directly from the legislature, $2.45 million spread over the 2 years that this project would be finishing up right away and under construction. We're expecting that still in 2023 to start construction. So, and then there's some franchise reimbursements from the communication companies where we share costs on relocating them to make room for this project. They write a check back to us for about $452,000. We will spend a great deal more than that to relocate their utilities, but they will reimburse us for that amount. And then the 2 lines that I skipped over initially, that's the money we don't yet have, which is a fair amount. It turns out the total project cost is currently estimated at over $23 million, $23,205, of which about 5.2 has secured, which we just talked about. And there's about 18 million that is currently unsecured. There's additional federal funding opportunities like the RAISE grant program, which I think we are committed now to submitting an application for. And that would be a wonderful thing if we could hit that one, because those are pretty large grants. Additional funding through our typical federal funding sources, which come as programmatic monies through the Puget Sound Regional Council, and then we compete with other cities in the PSRC territory for those monies. Many of those have funded parts of Phase 1 and have given us some grant money for Phase 2 as well. So always go back to the people that have already given you money if you're looking for more. That's a good thought, I think. And then there are now earmarks again at the federal level that it's a pretty active program now that we would use our lobbyist and help him and go and talk with all of our federal legislative contingent about potential earmarks. And there's a federal loan program called TIFIA, Transportation Infrastructure Finance, that I still can't remember the whole thing, but it's a pretty low interest loan, pretty complicated process to apply for it, although there is a program now called TIFIA Lite, which sounds promising, and it's supposedly going to cut 6 months out of the process of applying for and potentially getting a loan if you need one. And on the state and local side, we've already applied for a TIB grant, of $5 million. We will know whether we are in the money as of about December 2nd. Then a trust fund loan is a possibility too. We missed the last cycle by about 5 days, unfortunately. But when it's next opened up, you could get 5 to 10 million that way on a very attractive interest rate and very low closing costs. And those are pretty great if you have a source of revenue to pay it back. Local funding possibilities, I'm not suggesting any of these, but just some, things to think about. Your TBD is currently assessed a $20 local license fee that generates that money we talked about. There is another $20 authorized by approval of council in the state law. Transportation impact fees could be reviewed. You look at your capital program, find out what funding you actually have, and that dictates what you need, and you can calculate new fees for new development. I don't know if that would help. It wouldn't help immediately, but long-term, you're looking out fully 6 years, that could be helpful. And then the city's ARPA funding has a current balance, GO bonds, excess property tax levy, and so forth. Okay, this is the expenditure side of your draft TIP, going from 2023 to 2028. I'm not going to walk through all of these projects. Some of them should be of great interest, I would think, if they're in 23 or 24, because they will be in your next budget cycle. You can see at the bottom what the total was. I forgot to dwell on the beginning fund balance, which we've tried to hold pretty steady, and also hold the ending fund balance pretty steady in that $4 to $5 million range, so you can really see what's going on behind the scenes in terms of revenues and expenses. That was what that point was. And then just to make a couple of quick points, when you look at it graphically, the big orange piece, this is the 23 to 28 revenue picture as we see it currently. And there, you know, the probably 60+% of the funding needed to fund all of those projects we don't have in hand yet. That's not atypical, but it just shows you the job ahead, I guess. And the expenditures, you can also see that one of the big reasons is Main Street, which we just talked about. That's over $18 million of that money that we haven't identified. Then just looking at the next 2 years, which will be your focus fairly soon, the numbers aren't drastically different. There's still a large amount remaining to be identified, but not quite as much as in the entire CIP. And then on the expenditure side, yeah, that in the next 2 years, the Main Street project is truly the most of the ball game right there, trying to get that going and get it funded and completed in the next 2 years. Okay, I think I've said most of this. I think you're aware of it. The graphic's sort of helpful for those that may not be familiar with the project. The section at the bottom of this graphic that goes east and west between the Transit Center and 56th is phase 1, and that's complete. That is a huge thing if you're looking for additional money from any of those funders to have phase 1 of it done. That will help. And then the phase we're looking for now is the north-south piece that goes from, on 56th, from 236th to 230th. It's a couple thousand feet. I think I mentioned the money pretty much. Another project getting out of Main Street now that is big because it's current, it's to be built in 2023, is this 66th Avenue pavement reconstruction from 220th Street southwest to the north city limit, which is the interurban trail, and we'll also be making some improvements at the trail with a center median and additional signage and so forth, and warning lights. Construction design has been taking place in 2022. We should finish that by the end of the year, and then we're looking to go to construction in 2023. That's about a $2.5 million project. It is, at this point, we believe, fully funded. And that's using state gas tax, TIB grant. You know, this is not quite the right version of the PowerPoint, but I'm going to use it anyway. I did make some changes today. Snohomish County waste transfer mitigation, I wasn't aware of that funding, maybe because any previous city I've been in hasn't hosted a waste transfer station. So, but I guess you're getting about $200,000 a year from them in terms of revenue for the impacts they have on your road system. 216th and 48th, you can see in the graphic where all of the difficult to see black lines show bump outs on all the corners to reduce the pedestrian crossing distances. And that is a big improvement for pedestrian safety. There's a lot of pedestrian activity at this intersection. And I think, Mayor, as you pointed out last week, there's some missing chunks of sidewalk as well. We do have a Safe Routes to School grant of about $468,000, and we'll need $186,000 from city funds to match that. Design this year, construction next year. 48th Avenue bicycle/pedestrian connection from 236 to 244th. It replaces, as you can see in the picture, kind of a disappointing look of an old bike path, pedestrian path. The trees have kind of messed up. That'll be replaced with a new design. You can see the cross-section at the bottom. Design doesn't begin, though, until 2025, so it's not a really current project. 244th Street Southwest reconstruction. This is one of the 3 very large paving projects that are sitting out in the last 3 years of this, in 26, 27, and 28 of this plan. We don't have funding for any of them. These are road rebuilds. In this case, there's going to be some other improvements with curb gutters and sidewalk anticipated, bicycle lanes, a lot of improvements. It's not just a repaving project, but it is a very big project. I think it's $7.791 million. And we'll be seeking funding for the next several years to try to be able to pull that off. These are street sidewalk improvements on 214th, from 44th to the north entrance to Mountlake Terrace High School. I had some other information on the other slide here, but we do have a start of $80,000 from Snohomish County. And it would be quite eligible for TIB grants. 52nd Avenue West sidewalk improvements on the east side of 52nd, going from 222nd to 224th. And that completes an obvious missing chunk of sidewalk in that location. Here's the paving projects I do. I just talked about the first one. And those are very rough numbers. I have better numbers, I think, in the spreadsheet that we'll be getting to, both on 44th from 212th to 228th, on 220th, up, from the interurban trail to 52nd. That's about $6 million. I think the 6.5 is what's in the spreadsheet. All curb ramps improved to ADA requirements or newly installed. I'll say that, but you have to do that nowadays. It isn't optional, but that can usually end up to be about a 50% increase in the cost of a paving project. It can vary a lot, but that's kind of what I've seen over the last decade or so, about a 50% increase in paving costs. It's a good thing, don't get me wrong, but it just makes every paving project cost a bit more. Adding projects to the TIP allows the pursuit of grant funding. I guess we made that point earlier. Traffic signal upgrades, I mentioned that already. There's a couple of signal improvements that we're looking at. One's on 216th and 44th. Actually, not signal. These are traffic control and signal projects. This is a restripe. It's to help the flow of buses in and out of the high school and keep that a safer movement. There's some trade-offs in the current concept that we're still working on. It's not a lot of money. I think if it goes the way we think, it's probably a little over $100,000, or a little less than $100,000. I'm not remembering exactly, but it's not a big capital project. 220th and 58th, that'll either be a new signal someday. We'll start the design of something in 2026, or a roundabout. That's a potential as well at this stage. Pretty conceptual stage of design at this point. And then a couple of signal designs when they are warranted. Does that phrase ring a bell? So state has the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. is kind of the Bible for figuring out when to put in a stop sign, when to put in a signal, when to try various traffic control measures. And they have what they call warrants for them. And the general idea is you shouldn't do it until the area meets warrants. And those can be average daily traffic numbers, they can be pedestrian counts, they can be accident history. There's warrants around all of those things. So when you do meet one or more of those warrants, that's when you might want to put in a signal. It is likely, at least, that 236th and 58th won't meet warrants during this next planning period. So we've actually pulled that one off the TIP from last year. I'm not going to go through this. So that's because we have the hearing tonight, and I don't want to talk about utilities. And I apologize, I had updated this, but I think we found the wrong file when we loaded it up this evening. That's likely my fault. So I won't talk about utilities. We'll just move through that. Oops. And then the TIP update is consistent with council's current goals. That's something I think that's very important. Then also the kind of runaway inflation that we've incurred in the last 18 months or so has had an impact, well, both on the utilities, but in this case on the TIP, the cost of our capital projects is going up more rapidly than our revenues that we showed you are increasing. So with that, I'll just see if you have any immediate questions, and then we can open it up to the public hearing.
Okay. Any questions? Any comments?
Okay.
There are none.
Very good.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Then if we're ready, I'll move to open the public hearing. Second.
Did I hear a second? Oh, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is now open. Do we have anyone who would like to speak?
No one signed up in person. We did receive an email written testimony from Doris Cannon, which was forwarded to council to read, so that is on the record. And if there's anyone in the online audience who would like to speak, Brock Howell, I'll unmute you, and then you have 5 minutes to speak. There you go.
All right. Thank you. Mountlake Terrace City Council. My name is Brock Howell. I'm the director of the Snohomish County Transportation Coalition, or SNOTRAC for short. SNOTRAC is a mobility management coalition that advocates for connecting people and communities in Snohomish County and beyond with safe, equitable, and accessible transportation. To do this, we convene public, nonprofit, and private transportation human service agencies to identify mobility gaps and opportunities, especially for our priority populations of people of color, disability, older ages, youth, low-income, tribes, immigrants, and refugee status, and those who speak English as a second language. The unifying issue across our priority populations is low or no access to or the ability to use a personal vehicle. In addition, our priority populations tend to be disproportionately impacted by poor land use patterns and transportation options that increase exposure to air pollutants and housing and increase household costs like housing and transportation. In addition, traffic crashes disproportionately impact people of color, low income, older ages, disabilities, because these individuals tend to walk and bike more, and because roads near their homes tend to be faster and more dangerous. In Mountlake Terrace, 13% of residents have disability and 13% are 65 or older, and the latter of which is likely to increase significantly over time based off of the State Office of Financial Management's projections, and just generally what we know about population across this country as we are aging. So it's increasingly important that we build our communities in a way that are friendlier for older adults and people with disabilities. The 6-year TIP is a key document that helps outline your priorities for doing this. And so we're keenly interested in how you allocate these resources. We understand a major priority of the city for the last decade or two remains underfunded, and we look forward to seeing the city funding the Main Street program. We look forward to your leadership. And just one final note here. This is the Week Without Driving challenge by Disability Rights Washington. I do believe you have at least one council member participating in it. It's a great opportunity for you to put your feet in the shoes of people with disabilities or otherwise cannot get around by driving, just for 1 week to experience what it's like and to inform your policy making moving forward. And, you know, given the tip is moving forward, maybe this is a perfect week for you to do that. So thank you for the opportunity. We'll engage later as we learn a little bit more with your tip. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the online audience who would like to speak? Going once, going twice. That's it for public comment.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to close public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So motion carries. We are now closed. Next, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to adopt the 2023 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program ordinance.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Do we need to have do we have any discussions before we vote? Nope. So we can, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So motion carries. And we have now adopted that. Okay. Thank you. All right, so next on our agenda, do we have any more?
One
Oh, go
comment.
ahead.
Since we ended up with the wrong version of the PowerPoint, I wanted to at least show this to you because there was a project that was left off of the TIP. I redid all the numbers, but Jeff could talk in detail about this, but I think you're aware of the project. It's this Transportation Connections Corridor. It's in total about just over $5 million total project cost. It is currently fully funded. That's the great news. It doesn't change any of those deficits we talked about. And it adds that public plaza down at Van Ryan 236, which looks like a wonderful improvement. And then it upgrades trails through Veterans Park, all of them with asphalt pathways, walkway lighting. There's a new pedestrian bridge, all designed to get people to be able to non-motorized traffic to get to the rail station, reduce parking demands and all of those benefits, good for the environment, all those things. So that project will be on our tip. And I just wanted to, it's a little late, I guess, but I just wanted to mention that because I told Jeff I would, and it is in the other PowerPoint. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And so just to clarify, that was included in what we just adopted. Okay, great, thank you. Just a follow-up comment, following up on Thursday's public hearing, I also want to add my voice to the need for us to explore multiple options for how to fund Main Street. Some of the options, I agree with what was discussed on Thursday. I also wanted to add a reminder for local improvement districts, business improvement districts, tax increment financing, basically LCLIP. I mean, there's just a number of tools out there for us to explore, and I'd encourage us to look at all those tools and determine which ones are the best utilized to be able to help us close that gap of $18 million. So thank you.
Okay. Any more? So now we can move on to the next item. Thank you. So our next item on our agenda is the review and approval of Ballinger Park Trail construction contingency.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm just going to adjust myself here a little bit, I think. So I'm here tonight to review a request for contingency, to add some contingency to the budget for the Ballinger Park Trails project. So just as a recap, on July 28th, staff attended the council work session and reviewed Ballinger Park Trail construction contract. The contract was approved at that meeting in the amount of $296,549, and work did begin in August. Everything good so far at that point. Until we started doing some work in a couple of different areas, we noticed that there was an exceedingly high amount of peat, which is something we did know. We did geotechnical borings in 5 different locations, and it's well known there is peat at Ballinger Park. But the degree of peat was something that the contractor wasn't prepared to be able to construct upon. The project in general, just to remind everybody what this is, it's an 8-foot wide, 1,544 linear foot asphalt pathway, and it's on the east side of Ballinger Park. The trail runs from north to south and connects the Mickey Corso Community Clubhouse parking lot, where the senior center is, down to the boat launch to the south. So during construction, we noticed quite a bit of unstable peat, especially as they did some proof rolls with a loaded dump truck, and they noticed the ground really rolling when they drove out there. And it's quite concerning for the contractor to be able to actually get asphalt out there and take some heavy equipment to do that. And it's really a constructability issue. It's not a use issue. Once it's built, everything will be great either way. So that's not an issue, but it's really just trying to get the asphalt down is kind of the issue. So once we saw that, we brought in our on-call geotechnical company. And so that consultant came in to advise and do some recommendations of a strategy for construction. So that recommendation included additional excavation and about 2/3 of the trail. It's about 1,000 linear feet of the trail, and different degrees, because there's different degrees of peat, unstable peats, I should say. And the strategy included extra layers of crushed rock base course, but also geotextile fabric, which wasn't in the original design. And then in some areas, there's additional crushed rock and then another layer of geotextile fabric on top of that. So there's multiple layers in some of the more unstable locations. And the really unstable locations, there's one in the north and one in the south, and the north is by far the worst. It's a couple hundred linear feet in the north. But that change order amounts to approximately in the range of $75,000 to $100,000, what we're looking at. So we're requesting some contingency to cover that cost for the contractor so we can pay him that amount. In addition, another $25,000 in case something else comes up in the next couple of weeks. We anticipate the project being completed by the middle, probably the first week or so of October, I would say, but just be careful, middle of October. To offset those increases, we'd utilize park impact fees, which can be utilized 70% of the total cost. So as the cost goes up, so does the amount of park impact fees that can be used. So we'd put $70,000 extra, so it'd raise the impact fee amount to $285,494, and then an additional REIT amount, real estate excise tax, would be increased by $55,000 to $64,833 if necessary. That would be the backup plan. So those increases do leave adequate funding for other projects. It doesn't take from anything else. As a side note, we did receive word about a week and a half ago that we will receive additional land water conservation funding of $100,000 for the Evergreen Playfield number 3 project. That is scheduled to start design later this year and will break ground hopefully next summer. But just an example of that potentially could have freed up some funds as well that would be able to cover this contingency amount. So the next steps for the project would be finishing the North Trail stabilization would be this week. The asphalt contractor is scheduled to come out next week and finish the asphalt. The company was able to do part of it. So that would include paving, some curbs, and entry. They have to redo a couple of the entry points, as well as bollards. And then the next week, hopefully the first week of October, they'll be able to do final cleanup and restoration work. There's going to be some hydro seeding, things like that to clean up the park, make it look spectacular again. So that was the end of my presentation. This is a review and approval. We didn't get 2 meetings. This is just one. We're kind of on a short time frame, so I was hoping to get in front of you and get that approval tonight from you. So we're recommending that the council moves to authorize this contingency funding, to authorize the city manager as designee to approve of that spending not to exceed $125,000 total.
Okay. Do I see anyone? Go ahead, Councilmember Sonmore.
Just to clarify, let me see if I can see this okay. The contingency fund was 0, now it's $50,000. That was one change. And then the park impact fees were $70,000, now they're $215,494. And the real estate excise tax was $55,000, or was $9,833. Now it's $55,000, which is a grand total of what overruns are we doing on this project?
So the park impact fees would be increasing $70,000. The contingency amounts are 70 and 55, 70 more additionally for the contingency would come from park impact fees. And 55, the contingency is the real estate excise tax. So that brings the park impact fee total to $285,494, including the original plus the contingency.
So the impact fee, oops, I'm going to about lose power here, was 215, is now 215 minus 7. So you're saying it's 285? Because that's where it says for impact, but then it doesn't account for the real estate excise tax. So I'm just trying to find the overall total that we'll have to go above and over. And what happens if we vote no?
Yeah, the total project cost with the contingency would be $82,522 was coming from the aquatic land enhancement account. And then and that's from the RCO grant that we received a few years ago. The park impact fee total would be $285,494 with the contingency. And the REIT total would be $64,833 with the contingency. So the total amount would be $432,849.
That is, so, and then subtract 307,849 from the 432. I just want to know what we're voting, exactly how much over we're voting on tonight.
This is for 125,000.
To not go over.
Right.
But it was, but we did have cost overruns that were conceded through other means of taking money out of different things?
No, the 125,000 is going to be for all the cost overruns that we're going to incur. We're anticipating right now that it's going to be more like 75 to 100,000 for all the unstable peat issues we're having. So we're asking to be able to pay that wiser construction contract additionally beyond what you approved in end of July.
So for a trail of 1,544 feet, it's another $125,000.
Yes.
But I'm still not sure I'm understanding the park impact fees that were increased by 70,000, but they were 215,000. That's the part I need a little bit more explanation on.
Did you want?
Maybe help.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
If I'm correct, that is how we're going to pay for the additional 125,000.
That's correct. It's the revenue source for that 125,000.
Does that help?
Kind of. I'm just wondering what 215,000 minus 70 and then 55,000 minus almost 10,000. So that equals 125,000? I'd have to get a calculator.
Councilmember, are you looking at the memo? Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, I'm looking at the memo. Because it looks like the cost would be a little bit more than 125. Because you also have the contingency, so there's $50,000. And then you have $215,494 minus 70. I'm just trying to do the math so I understand it correctly.
So on the memo, the project costs are on the bottom of the first page, right? So it has the amount we awarded in construction costs was $296,549, plus there's some other fees that came into that dollar amount too. So including like permits, geotech survey, 1% for the arts. So these are the total project costs, what we're estimating at being $432,849, including that contingency amount of $125. It has contingency listed as 50, and then the change order estimate for soil stabilization at 75,000 on the front of that memo. So that total is 432,849. It was.
So so you have an extra $9,300 and then another 50,000 and then another 75,000? I'm just trying to get the math to line up that I understand it, because you have project funding that is the project impact fees and then the grant and the realized excise tax for $432.80. It's the same amount as up above. And
Right.
so that's how you're trying to pay for it, but I'm just understanding the overall cost of just having the peat there that we all know, especially is on the island. It's $125,000 over cost.
That's correct.
Okay, because it looked like it was a lot more if I added up the $145,000 from the $70,000 impact fees, that would be $145,000. And then you had another $50,000 from the contingency fund. So I was just trying to understand the total amount of cost overruns from the peat.
Right, yeah, sorry if I didn't make that clear. The project costs on the first page are just what we're expecting the expenses to be, and that top of the second page is just how we're going to pay for it. And it's adding in, it shows increased by amounts for those two italicized lines. That's how we're proposing to pay for the increased costs of what we're saying the contingency amount is of $125,000. We hope it's not that much. We hope it's more of the 75 to 100 and not 125. We just don't know over the next 2 weeks what's going to happen. And so we want to be prepared for that.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jeff, for coming and bringing this to us. I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing to bring forward. And I guess the question I know we often get when we have these sorts of things is, are there things we could have done differently to better assess this? Why is this our responsibility versus the contractor's responsibility who bid on the job? Can you just talk through some of those pieces?
Well, I think that a lot of that goes into design, right? So if you're able to catch some of these things in the design process, and we did design this in-house, so it wasn't the contractor. The contractor is just hired to construct it. So it's our job to assess the geotechnical report and risk related to that, either one way or another, to build out a project budget and related to that and what we think it's going to bid at. And I don't think that we had the idea that there was going to be this much soil instability. So there's not something that we designed for. Most of the time there's a couple of different levels of thought when it comes to, I'm not an engineer, I'll say that out front, but from what I've been told, there's several different lines of thought when it comes to building on unstable soils like peat. And one idea is to make it as light as possible so you're not putting heavy equipment out there and you're not constructing it of really heavy materials so it doesn't sink and it's easier to construct. But that's a specialty equipment type thing too, so that could cost a whole lot more money just to construct because they have to find specialty lightweight equipment and it has to be specified that way when you go to bid. And then the other way is to construct it how you think it's going to work out. And then this happens to where the soils are more unstable than even we thought was going to happen at this point. This is much further than I thought we'd have to go for soil stability. I anticipated if they were going to come to us and said we need to put some additional material down, that would have been like maybe half that amount or a third of what we're looking at now. So this is quite a bit more in material costs, and a lot of it is the excavation costs, even extra time to do that. So it's definitely more expensive than I imagined.
Yeah, it's definitely, I was going to say a third plus, cost increase on a project like this is definitely hard to swallow midstream, but obviously, there's not much that we can also do at this point, which is a hard situation to be in. I guess my only other question for you was that 1% for the arts. Does that change as the cost of the project increases?
What we've done in practice since we've been instituting this and looking at our code is that when we go to estimating the project and it goes to bid, that's what the cost is. And if we continue to move that number around, I think that it would kind of blow some of our budgets. In some instances, you could consider like City Hall or something like that, where the 1% of the arts could be $100,000. And if that continues to move around as we add pieces to the project, it's hard to, as a project manager, to budget that amount and to move forward the correct dollars. So that's how we've been taking a look at it, is once you get to 35, 65, 95, we're at 100% design, this is how we move forward. So we don't normally bring in all the change orders and change the 1% for the arts cost.
Interesting.
It's something that we could look at adjusting. I don't know if it specifies specifically actually in our code. Maybe Stefan knows more about that. You addressed that with City Hall quite a bit. The moving 1% for the arts cost.
For this building here,
Yeah.
it was about $84,000, $90,000 was the budget. That's hard construction. So it was originally estimated to be around, before soft cost, around 9.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional information.
You're welcome.
Do I see any other? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you to our fellow council members. I appreciate your questions. Tough message to have to deliver, but I did want to let you know I went out of my way to drive by today, and it looks great for what that's worth to know. So, yes, costing more, but I would say I'd almost use the word unobtrusive, like how come that hasn't been there all along, which I was concerned how that was going to look. But now that it's shaping up, if you haven't had a chance to drive by, I would encourage you to do so, because you can see the actual trail, the pavement that they have laid down, and I would argue you can see how that's going to really change the use of that park and make it accessible for a lot more people than can use it currently.
Anyone else? So just out of curiosity, where the peat is in that park and on the island, but did we have problems with the rest of, when we built houses across the street? Was there peat there? Because we're having so much peat issues in that part that I'm just wondering if we had peat issues in the past in other parts of our city. But if you don't have the answer to that, that's fine. But it just kind of made me think, wow, we built everything across the street from there. Did we have any problems with sinking?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that we do have a lot at Ballinger Park, but there are areas of Ballinger Park that there is no peat. So it's really a hit and miss scenario. Where the playground is, it's very good soil. So it's really, as you go further away from the lake and the ponds, the soil's a lot better. But if you look at the Ballinger parking lot there up at the senior center, how it's sinking over time.
Right.
Same issue with peat there. So in some areas of the trail, they found that near the trail, there's 26 feet deep of peat.
Oh my gosh.
26 feet?
There are some areas where there's a lot of peat. There's some areas where it's fine. It's really a hit and miss type thing.
Okay. Go ahead,
Then
Councilmember
can I do,
Sandmore.
because, I'm still choking on the almost $500,000 for the 1,544 feet trail. How do we insure it? Because we do know the senior center has had some issues with settling and things. Do they guarantee their work for so long? Because I'm assuming that, especially with 26 feet of peat, I think you said, it'll adjust. How long will this last?
I don't know if I can answer exactly how long it'll last, but we are anticipating providing maintenance to the trail, not only for the surface itself, but if you look at other trails within the park system that we have not provided as much maintenance or redone over time that we need to do, or even there's sidewalk issues like anywhere is with tree roots, things like that. So we do realize it's going to take some maintenance, but we're hoping that geogrid that we're using helps it settle uniformly and then there won't be like this cracking trip hazard type thing. So we know it will settle over time. It's just, it won't settle unevenly and create breaks in the asphalt is what we're hoping. That's happening at the parking lot where they use that same material, where it's settling pretty uniformly around that, the sewer line that's on pilings. You see that's kind of like a speed bump right now, but the rest of the parking lot is settling evenly around it. So, but the other thing this does, it's going to help us inform us for the other trails that are going to go in Ballinger Park, because we do have a grant to install asphalt pathways on the west side of the park as well. And we have no idea what the soils look like there, so we're going to have to do some geotechnical borings and use some of this information and methods that we've done to hopefully help us build a pretty good product next time too. So hopefully we'll be able to learn from some of these issues.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. And sorry, since you mentioned the trails on the west side of the park, I guess it would be wonderful to explore if there are other options that maybe are also, help with inclusive use of the park, but maybe aren't as detrimentally impacted as asphalt if there is settling, just so perhaps we have options when we take a look at that at some point in the future. If we're not maybe already thinking about those things, but given what we're learning, that would maybe be a helpful thing for us to be able to talk about when we get there.
Yeah, no, we've been talking about it recently as well. The issues that we are having now are going to influence what we do, but we are committed to the project scope that we've pitched to the Recreation Conservation Office. So we received a $500,000 grant to construct those. And if we make changes to them, they may pull our grant funding. So we'd have to potentially pitch those changes to them to see if they would change our agreement. So that project is funded with, I'm talking about the West Side Trails and Viewing Platform project that we're hoping to go out for a consultant to help us do design here soon. And then we would do design and construction would happen a year from next summer. So it's more like a 2024 summer construction project. But we have funding committed to us from a few sources. So we're not paying from general fund for that. So we do have some grant funds that we can utilize to construct that, but we're gonna have to do kind of the geotechnical information, the survey data. We're gonna have to pull a lot of information to make some educated decisions on how to go forward and what that should look like. We have accessibility concerns as well, so we wanna make sure we get people to all the elements within the park. And there are ways to do that without asphalt, but it's kind of a tricky slope there to kind of navigate, so.
I appreciate that you're having those conversations and thinking about those things, and look forward to hearing more as the project moves along. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to authorize the city manager or his designee to approve contingency spending not to exceed $125,000.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is new business. Does anyone have any new business? Go ahead, Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick story. I recognize we have an executive session, so I won't go too long here. I think you all know I work for Volunteers of America Western Washington. One of the honors that we have is for the city of Everett. We run their Carl Gibson Senior Center, now Community Center. That's to say that one of the times that I was visiting the center, I ran into one of our residents. In talking and in living in a 4 square mile, we discovered that we live only walking distance from each other. He is in the audience with us today. So joining us today is retired Pastor Lee Lowry. And I just wanted to acknowledge his presence here because we've been talking about the city being accessible. The park conversation was all about accessibility. He's genuinely within walking distance for most of us to this council, but has not been able to do that. And he's wanted to do that. So I appreciate that we have the hybrid, but it's not the same as being in the space. So just wanted to pause and just say thank you, sir, for joining us today. And in particular, taking time out of your day to come and learn your city. That noted, extending the story a little bit, I've been setting you up because you kept saying you wanted to meet the people who run the city and you think you're looking at them. Actually, they've been sitting next to you this whole time. Which is really to acknowledge, I'm sorry, Chrissy didn't come back into the room. We didn't have all of our directors here and off to my left as well. But these are the folks who actually run our city. We have the honor of just, I would say, checking their work, sometimes what it feels like. But really, we just have the honor of being the face of the hard work that they all put in. So you chose a wonderful day to say, let me pick you up and bring you here to see what happens because you've seen some amazing people. I think you can hear all of the hard work that they put in. And a number of these folks just picked up the ball and started running with it about a week ago. But they've been doing this work for a long time. So thank you for being in the space. I've had a chance to introduce him to most of you, and I apologize for the ones I didn't get a chance to walk you over to him. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so next on our agenda is the executive session. And we're going to meet in an executive session regarding evaluating performance of a public employee per RCW 42.30.1101G. So are we going to then meet into?
We need to determine how long we're going to stay in executive session.
Do we want to start with 30 minutes?
Yes.
All right. And then action may be taken, it says, right? So we're out of executive session and no action was taken. We are now adjourned. Well, the gavel's here.
Recording stopped.